Some carry back bags of flour, that most precious of commodities in Gaza. Some hitch a ride on trucks, long since stripped of all their supplies. Others return bearing the bodies of loved ones. Feel for us, this man implores, and maybe God will feel for you. More than 50 Palestinians were killed hoping to access aid close to the Zikkim crossing in northern Gaza yesterday. The Israeli army says it fired warning shots at a crowd near aid trucks and is examining the incident. But the killing by soldiers of people hoping to feed their families has become a daily occurrence. At the Al-Auda hospital today, there's barely space on the floor for the dead and wounded. Victims of another Israeli attack, this time on Palestinians seeking aid from one of the Israeli and US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation's distribution sites.
We were hiding and suddenly they said the aid point had opened. We rushed there and then the gunfire started. The Zionist army began shooting at us.
Our fact-check team have been looking into data around the killing of civilians seeking aid by Israeli forces. Their analysis of figures from the monitoring group ACLED show that in the 1.5 years of conflict before the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation system was established, across all of these months, the total number of aid-related deaths that took place was just under 650. After it was set up in just 2 months, that figure rose to close to 1,200 such deaths. Most were killed around GHF sites, though Palestinians are now also routinely being shot, trying to get hold of aid from trucks belonging to the UN. We've also looked at the proportion of killings that are related to aid. You can see prior to the GHF, certainly lots of Palestinians being killed each month shown in these bars, but only a small proportion in red are aid-related deaths. After the GHF begins operating, well, that figure goes up to 20–30% of all victims, at times many more, again in red, all those people being killed just trying to access food. In this video from an aid convoy released by the UN today, they say Israeli forces fire close to a desperate crowd. Starving and miserable, it doesn't hold them back, and they grab whatever they can.
Check your doors locked, check your doors locked.
Israel has said it's opened up humanitarian corridors to allow more aid in. The UN say they still face far too many obstacles. Today in Jerusalem, President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, met with Israel's Prime Minister to discuss the humanitarian crisis.
End this nightmare for the hostages.
The families of Israeli hostages demonstrated outside, calling for a ceasefire deal. But today, President Trump has been echoing the line adopted by Israeli officials that Hamas must surrender. Trump also pushed back against Canada's Prime Minister for saying he plans on recognizing a Palestinian state later this year.
The deepening suffering of civilians leaves no room for delay in coordinated international action to support peace, security, and the dignity of human life.
There's now a growing movement amongst traditional allies of Israel to do the same. But in Gaza right now, it's the most basic elements of survival they need the most. Mothers too malnourished to breastfeed, unable to find formula, now feed babies tea or tahini paste instead of milk. They're watching, powerless, as their children slip away. And so are we.
Well, Ruth Wasaman, who's a former member of the Israeli Knesset, joins me now from Tel Aviv. Thanks for coming back on the programme, Ruth Wasaman. Can you understand why first Macron, then Starmer, and now Carney have held the recognition of Palestine as a threat over Israel in the coming weeks and months?
Good evening, sir, and thank you for having me on the program. There have been many pieces of disinformation, unfortunately, in the related article that you just ran. The mothers that are not able to feed their children, the malnourishment and so on, and the fact that it was said that the Israeli IDF is shooting at civilians coming to get food is simply a lie. I went down.
That's not what we're being told by people on the ground. That's not what the UN believes. That's not what Western governments believe. I think actually even the IDF has said in many of these cases that they are looking into these facts. So I'm afraid it is not a lie. It is the truth, and it is the reason why countries that have been very supportive of Israel since October the 7th have now decided that it's time to take drastic action diplomatically in order to try and rein the IDF and your government in.
With all respect, sir, I've listened very carefully to what was said on your program and to yourself as well. And you've brought me on the show, I believe, to ask for my opinion and for my analysis.
And
I'm a
I asked
mother
you
of
that,
4
and
children.
exactly. And I asked your opinion about recognition, and
But
you
you didn't let me
decided to
finish
say
the
that all the
sentence.
facts in the well, I did give
I
you the
didn't say
answer.
all the facts. I didn't say all the facts. I
Okay.
said the specific fact that the IDF
right.
shoots at civilians is, and I stand behind this, a lie. In fact, I went down south several days ago to check for myself. It was
Well, you were in
important for me
Gaza.
to
You
make
were at one
sure.
of the distribution points when these killings occurred.
I went and I saw from a distance because I was not allowed to go right next to it. And I wanted to make sure for myself. It is completely a lie. Furthermore, the fact
So
that
how
we
are these
have
people dying? Who's
absolutely.
killing these people?
May I answer? I actually went on the program to answer. In fact, I knew that you would probably have a lot of criticism, which is legitimate, but I do want to share with you my analysis and my
Okay,
knowledge.
go ahead.
And you may accept it or you may not. Okay? Israel has no interest in shooting innocent civilians. In fact, there are no other examples in regional conflicts where a country which is at war is actually providing humanitarian aid consistently to their so-called enemy in a war state. Now, who's shooting them is an excellent question, and it's a very important one for people to understand. The Hamas is a very extremist designated terrorist organization, which has been underground in a tunnel system which is larger than the London Underground.
Okay.
They have been sitting there in safety while the civilians, their own people, are being at war, bombarded. Okay. Now, they take those trucks that you mentioned in your article, and they literally, and there's footage of that. They steal
Okay.
the
But this,
exact humanitarian aid. I'll be finished in a second.
in a second,
The
please.
exact humanitarian aid that you are talking about. In fact, they sell the humanitarian aid, which is supposedly free. Free.
Okay.
Now,
okay. So let me have a go with the question. So none of this is borne out by the facts that we've been reporting, that international aid organizations have been reporting, that are actually inside Gaza. What they're telling us is a completely different story. And even if you don't, let me just finish my question. And even if you don't believe that these people have been shot by the IDF, the official amount, well, I beg to differ. The official amount of aid that is coming, well,
with all respect, you are not there.
I wish I could be, but the Israeli army has not allowed us to go into Gaza. Now, why is that?
The UN.
2 years we've not been allowed to go to Gaza to report. Now, what are you trying to hide there?
First of all, we are not trying to hide anything. There were reporters, perhaps not yourself, but there were reporters that were allowed, including the CNN.
With the IDF going in and out, that's another matter.
Of course, the IDF were.
Okay. We're slightly running out of time, so let's get back to the substantive question.
There is a journalistic
Your
kind
recognition,
of
the
honor.
recognition of Palestine.
There is a journalistic honor. You are not letting me finish a sentence, and that
but
is
you're not answering my question. You're not answering my question.
But I'm not answering anything. In fact, I'm not able to say one sentence.
Okay,
so
let's get back to that. May I rephrase the question so we can get back to neutral territory? The question is, with respect, my question to you is the recognition of Palestine by Western powers. Do you understand why this is taking place?
Sir, let me explain something to you. If you are willing to have your daughters 30 meters away from terrorists who have said again and again, very, very unashamedly, that they will carnage, massacre, rape, and burn them because they are British or Christian or whatever it is that you belong to, and you feel that your government should not do anything at all, plus your government would be giving food to those specific people who wish and claim again that they will ravage, massacre, burn, and rape your daughters, and you feel that this is a normal situation, and you feel that it is correct to give them a state, which they had since 2005. They had independence.
Okay.
And what did they do with that independence? They carnaged their own territory. Now, Canada has the biggest number of Muslim Brotherhood members in the entire globe. I wish them good luck. In fact, sir, I wish you and the British people a lot of luck, because you will, unfortunately, and I pray for you from the bottom of my heart as one mother to the mothers of the United Kingdom, that you will be safe, because you are being overtaken by extremist Islamist forces. Now, there are good Palestinians.
Actually, you know what?
There are good Palestinians.
Yes, okay.
But the
We've actually run out.
Hamas is very bad.
All right.
And they are taken hostage by those bad Hamas people.
Okay,
who
we've now
are
run out of
shooting at
time.
their people.
Ruth Wasaman, you've had a very long time to answer that question. I'm not sure if you've really answered it, but thank you very much for coming on the programme anyway.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Well, now the crossbench peer Baroness Deitch is one of 40 members of the House of Lords who warned that Sir Keir Starmer's pledge to recognise a Palestinian state could breach international law. She joins me now, and we're also joined by former Supreme Court Justice Lord Sumption. He's called on the UK to sanction Israel over the war in Gaza. Welcome to you both. Let me start off with you, Baroness Deitch. I mean, quite apart from what we just heard, I gather you've signed this letter. You're one of the 39 signatories against recognition of Palestine. Tell us why.
Well, the government doesn't seem to know what it's doing. This morning it was saying that the legal requirements for recognition exist. And then later on it was saying, oh, but some court said it did. And now they're saying, oh, it's political, it's not legal. The only point I want to make, and the other signatories, is this, that recognition, quite apart from self-determination or anything else, recognition has 4 requirements, which is a settled population, doesn't exist, fixed boundaries, a government, there isn't one, and the capacity to enter relations with other states. And to try and use conditions around this just doesn't make sense. Also, your very own story, the sad story we saw a moment ago, shows why recognition is actually irrelevant. If Britain recognised Palestine tomorrow, would there be food in Gaza? Would Hamas dig up the tunnels? Would there be peace in the Middle East? 140 countries have already recognised Palestine, hasn't made a scrap of difference. So to try and use it as a lever and ignore the law doesn't help. There have to be other routes to the peace that we'll seek.
Lord Sumption, do you agree with Baroness Deitch?
No, I'm afraid that the letter that she has signed is quite plainly wrong. I agree with the four criteria for the existence of a state, but it seems completely clear that Palestine has all of those characteristics. It has a defined territory, namely the old mandatory Palestine minus the territory of Israel. It has a settled population, although they've been much moved about by Israeli bombs. It has a government. You may not like the government. It may be a terrorist government, but it is a government. And it has the capacity to conduct international relations. It was recognised last July by the International Court of Justice, which is the highest authority on international law, as having a right to statehood. It's recognised by 147 out of 183 members of the United Nations. It has relations with all of those that recognise it. Traditionally, this is a question of fact. Palestine is a state, and it seems to me that the sooner that we acknowledge the facts and recognise it, the better.
Baroness Deitch, I mean, there are many people, including this government, who still cling to a two-state solution. for a two-state solution to happen, however unrealistic that might seem at the moment, you've got to have two states. So shouldn't one argue that in order for that to take place, you do need to recognise Palestine? In fact, some would argue you should have done it a long time ago.
Well, Palestine has to make a state. I wouldn't agree with Lord Sumption that there is a government. Does he mean Hamas? Does he mean Mahmoud Abbas, who stayed there without elections for 20 years? And as far as the population goes, are they residents or are they refugees? They call themselves refugees. What about the Palestinians living in Jerusalem, the Arabs living in Israel, the huge Palestinian diaspora abroad? And again, Mahmoud Abbas has said that they would not be welcomed back into Palestine or given citizenship because that would undermine what they want, their right of return. In other words, overrunning Israel, to have one state and no Israel. So I factually disagree with him, and I disagree with him about the importance of recognition. It can't be legal. It won't have any leverage. It's just posturing. It's playing to a certain audience. Right. We understand that, and it won't make any difference whether the Prime Minister does it or not.
Right, and isn't one of the reasons why those four criteria that you mentioned are not being met by Palestine, and you can argue or not whether that is instrumental, isn't one of the reasons that Israel itself has made it very difficult to have a viable Palestinian state? Baroness Deach.
But a Palestine was offered in 1938, in 1948, in 2008 and in 2000, and every time it's been turned down. In fact, if it had been accepted 50, 60, 70 years ago, it would have been much bigger than it is now. So I suspect there is no real desire for a state. It is simply, sadly, an effort to get rid of Israel itself.
Okay, well, let's ask Lord Sumption what he makes
of it. If the hostages were released, think how different the atmosphere would be.
Okay, Lord Sumption.
Let the hostages go, behave like normal, peaceful human beings, and it would all be different.
Lord Sumption. Lord Sumption, your response to that?
I entirely disagree with the suggestion that there isn't a settled territory or a settled population. There are all of those things, and if there weren't, we wouldn't have had an opinion from the International Court of Justice last year which said so. What the International Court of Justice said was that Palestine, although divided into two chunks with separate governments, is one unit. It is effectively a state, and we are recognising a state, not any particular government.
Lord Sumption, what do you make of the argument that actually one of the reasons why Keir Starmer has held out this threat of recognising Palestine is essentially to appease backbenchers in his own party? Lord Sumption.
Well, I don't know whether that's true or not. The conditions that he's posed, conditions which are most unlikely to be satisfied, are really, I mean, they sound like a political fudge. They're a bit of a nonsense. Either Palestine is a state or it isn't. Whether it's a state or not depends on the facts. It doesn't depend on what Mr. Netanyahu may do in the next 2 months.
Lord Sumption and Baroness Deach, thank you very much indeed to both of you for joining me.